Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. You're listening to the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks, and we've got a really great show for you today. Travis Dauchy is back with us, and Travis is with Atlas Private Wealth Advisors, and he's going to be talking to us about planning ahead and how to get your ducks in a row so your family can focus on your care rather than all of the legalities and problems that may come up in planning for long-term care for a loved one. So stick around to listen to Travis for that. And then we also have Greg from Jax Hope, and we are going to be talking about the annual Parkinson's run that's coming up on April 13th at Riverside Park. So stay tuned for details about that. But first, Brittany is back with me, and we are going to be talking about estate planning with a will. What decisions do you have to make? Will it go through probate? What does your personal representative have to do once they are nominated in your will, and all of those fun details. So please stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks, and I am here with Brittany Darling, and we are going to be talking about wills and probate today. We're going to talk about all the things you need to know about putting a will in place, how you need to do that, what are the requirements, and what happens if you don't. So, Brittany, welcome. Thank you for being here with me today.
Thanks, Emily.
So let's get into the basics. Everybody knows that they need to create a will, and basically the requirements are pretty straightforward. It needs to be written. It needs to be witnessed by two people. Unfortunately, I say it's simple, Brittany, but then I see this stuff that people download off the internet, and I think, oh no.
No. Yeah. I know. I don't know that everyone realizes how formal the process needs to be. And, like you said, there has to be two witnesses, and there also needs to be a notary present.
I'm glad you brought that up, because the notary is a great idea, because that means that you're doing what's called a self-proving affidavit. And that's an affidavit that you sign, that the witnesses also sign, stating that they have witnessed your signature on this will. And a notary is actually, they are attesting to the notary that they have witnessed it. So what that does is that's a piece of evidence, essentially. Because if you have a will and you have two people witness it, when it goes through probate, which it does, and I want everybody to understand that a will goes through probate. It goes through court. That's a document that, okay, you state your wishes, and the lawyer just says, here you go, everybody. It's not like that.
Right.
It has to be formally adjudicated by the probate court and the judge. And that's really essentially the only way title is changed from your personal name to whomever you want to leave that asset to. Because let's face it, you're dead. You can't sign a deed. You can't sign a title to anything anymore. So there's no other way to do it, other than that. What's so great about the self-proving affidavit is now, if you don't have that, those witnesses will potentially have to testify to the court that they did see you sign the will. So it relieves them of that duty of having to then present the evidence, so to speak, that they actually did witness that, because we're saying, hey, they witnessed it. They're swearing to a notary that they witnessed it. And that's like an affidavit of saying they did it, so you don't have to do it later. So we do it all at the signing at the same time, so that we don't have to actually try to find these people in 20 years from now, or however long it is, so that we can get this will proved to the court.
Yeah. So we've established that it's a pretty formal process. And I actually think people appreciate that it's kind of, it's the way it's done, and it's official, and that it's going to go through court without any issues on that end. So let's say that listeners are like, okay, I know I need to do a will, but what decisions do I have to make in this will to do the will correctly?
Yeah. So basically, you want to make sure you nominate someone as everyone says executor. We call it personal representative in Florida, but either way, everybody knows what it is. So if you say executor, that's fine. But you want to name someone as your personal representative and hopefully have a backup as well. You want that person to be a Florida resident if they're not a close relative. So, that's something that people are surprised about, but they need to be an adult and they need to be a Florida resident unless they're a close relative to you. And then there are exceptions for that. And there's kind of a long list of people that can do it as family members, from other states.
Here's a random question for you. Are there companies available if, say, like you don't have a close relative and maybe you don't have that type of relationship with a friend in your area? Are there companies that will be that personal representative for you?
Yeah, attorneys will do it as well.
Okay.
We don't like to do it because, well, I mean, I guess some don't really mind. I don't like to do it. But
yeah, it feels like a very personal time in someone's life and some family's life. And I would be nervous as well.
yeah, it's basically, there's a lot of duty. That brings it up another good point as far as like the personal representative, because there's a lot of duties that you have when you take on the role. And I'm just going to kind of talk about a few of them. It's your job really is to push the case forward through the court. You are going to be the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to take inventory. You're going to gather all the assets, try to figure out what all, the person had, and you're going to take an inventory of that, and you're going to have to establish a value on all of the assets of the estate. And then you're going to have to send a copy of that inventory to all the interested parties. And if necessary, you may have to provide a written explanation of those values and with copies of appraisals and things like that. Appraising is a big part of that when you're talking about anything of significant value that you'll have to get an appraisal for, artwork, houses, certainly, just anything that you have to
would boats
appraise.
count in that?
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Even cars, would cars count for that too?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on what the will says. Like if you're trying to liquidate everything and like split proceeds and things like that, then that's when it's really important to, do stuff like that. Like if you specifically give a gift of an item like a car or a boat or something to a person, then it may not come into play necessarily unless it just depends on what the language says. But so you'll have to take inventory. That's a really big part of it. Securing the property too is another big thing because, Brittany, the sad thing is when someone dies, a lot of people come out of the woodwork sometimes and they like to get their hands on things. So I had this situation with a client that the person died unexpectedly and just people started coming to the house and taking things. And she was having a really hard time securing the property. They finally they got it secured. They ended up taking it over as far as like moving in, and it was going to be hers anyway. But stuff like that happens when people think they can, oh, this was mine, or I gave this to them, or whatever justification that they have. When someone dies, everything needs to freeze essentially. But yeah, we had a situation where she had to get really, really involved in securing the property from people because they were going in and taking things. So that's another duty that you have as a personal representative. And then of course you're going to have to serve notice to creditors. So you have to publish a notice to creditors per Florida law. And you have to identify the reasonably ascertainable creditors, meaning the people that you kind of know they owe money to. The people that you're going to have to alert people that the decedent, who's the person that died, owes money to, because all of that stuff needs to be paid. All of the debts need to be paid.
Okay.
So, that's part of the requirements as well. Filing taxes, if any estate taxes due. As you know, in 2024, our federal estate tax exemption is $13.61 million per person, which is a heck of a lot of money to leave somebody tax-free. But that's what we've got. And that doubles as a married couple. So, that's a lot of exemption that we're, having right now. Again, that is set to go down at the end of 2025. So in 2026, we're going to see that go back down to 5 million, which per inflation, I think is going to be higher, but that's the rule unless something changes. I never know. Like, we don't know what's going to happen politically. So this is just what we're saying is on the books right now. That is set to sunset at the end of 2025. But yes, we have an incredibly high federal estate tax exemption right now. So if that person does, like we were just talking about, Tony Hsieh, who died without a will, who was the CEO of Zappos. If you're not familiar with what Zappos is, it's started as an online shoe company. I think they sell like all kinds of things now, but Zappos.com, the CEO died a few years ago. And I think his estate was like 740 million or something like that. It was something crazy high. And he didn't have a will or anything. I don't think he was married or had any children. So it ended up going to his parents and his siblings is how that all panned out. But we'll talk about that in a minute, how that goes in Florida too. Basically, any taxes, you're going to have to, make sure that a tax return is filed for the person for that year as well, which is another kind of surprising thing that people don't want to do.
Right. It makes me think about, we provide our clients with an estate plan organizer when we have a client. And one of the things that we make sure that is on that is someone's accountant, because like you said, like you have to file the taxes for the person who passed away. And to do that, you're going to need to get in touch with their accountant, or you're going to need their previous tax returns to be able to prepare a tax return.
Yeah.
So just so you know, if you're going to be someone's personal representative, there is some work involved.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and then we get to the good stuff, which is distributing the assets. When you create your will, you're going to name who you want to be your personal representative, but then you're also going to have to say how you want your property to be distributed after you pass. And that's going to be to your heirs or to whomever you want it, to be to. So the personal representative first has to use the assets to pay your debts and any of the administration costs, lawyer fees, just all of the things. And then the final distribution can be made to the beneficiaries. Depending on what the asset is and what the will says, then that can be simple, but it can sometimes be kind of complicated because a lot of times you're just going to have to sell things. If the beneficiary, especially like, with properties, let's say this comes up a lot where there's property here, but none of the beneficiaries live here and they just want to sell the property and split the proceeds. So that can take some time and somebody has to oversee that. So that happens a lot. And then once everything is properly accounted for and everybody is paid and there's no litigation, there's no claims, there's nothing else to do, then you can close the estate. So, and then your duties are discharged as personal representative. So it can be quite a lot, just depending on what all the assets are. Sometimes it can be quite simple and you can do what's called a summary administration, which is when there's, less than 75,000 in assets. It's a bit simpler of a process and shorter, but generally we say the probate process in Florida, we usually say it takes about a year for a formal administration. So that can take some time. It takes some time. And most of the time when people come to me and they have done it for maybe like a parent or for somebody else in the family, they're like, we don't want to, anybody to go through that again, is the general consensus that I hear. What happens if you don't have a will? And that defaults to the state of Florida plan, which means you die intestate is what it's called. And there's a lot of Florida rules about when someone dies intestate, then how the distribution of their assets go. So if you don't have a will and you're married, okay, there's different kind of scenarios to it. So if you die without a will and If there is no surviving descendant, meaning if you don't have any children, then your spouse gets everything. Okay, so 100% will go to your surviving spouse if you don't have any children. Now, if you are survived by one or more descendants, one or more children, and all of whom are descendants of the surviving spouse. So let's say you're married and you guys have children together and you die first and you have a surviving spouse and your children are still alive, then, and to complicate it a little bit more, and your surviving spouse does not have any other descendants, then the surviving spouse gets the entire estate in that scenario as well. And you can kind of follow the logic on that, thinking if your spouse doesn't have any other children, then, she in theory will leave everything to her children, to the children that you have together, right? So that's kind of the logic in that. And if there are one or more surviving descendants of the decedent who are not lineal descendants of the surviving spouse, however, then the surviving spouse will get half. So let's say you're in a second marriage and you die while you're in your second marriage, but you have children from your first marriage. Then upon your death, and this is if you do not have a will, the state of Florida says 1/2 goes to your surviving spouse, 1/2 goes to your children. Now, if there are one or more surviving descendants of the decedent, which is the person who has died, all of whom are also descendants of the surviving spouse, and the surviving spouse has one or more descendants who are not descendants of the decedent, then in that scenario, the surviving spouse also gets 1/2. So if you guys have children together, but perhaps she has children from a previous marriage as well, then in that scenario, the surviving spouse, and I'm saying that the husband's dying in that, the surviving spouse will get half of the estate in that scenario as well. So if that makes any sense, because again, following the reasoning of if she has other children, then there's going to be more claims on her estate at the end of the day. So that's how the laws of intestacy, go as far as with marriage.
Yeah. So I think
that makes sense.
I think the moral of the story is if you've been listening and this sounds like your situation and you don't want it to happen that way, then let's get a plan in place for you.
Sure.
Because the state of Florida has a plan for you if you don't put your wishes in writing.
Yes, absolutely. We've created a page for you too. If you are listening and you need to get your will in place and you've maybe been procrastinating or not wanting to think about it as 99% of the people out there are. And I totally understand because I hear that almost every time someone comes and says, oh gosh, I've been meaning to do this, or this is on my list. And, I put it off. So we have good news for you. You can head on over to emilyhickslaw.com/I need a will, and you can book a call with me. We can talk about what all you need to put in place and get you going from there if you haven't done anything already, or maybe you need to update. Maybe life has changed and nothing ever stays the same. Every 3 to 5 years, I say, let's take a look and make some updates if possible. And if this scenario arises and the need arises for that, then we can certainly do that. But make sure you're not just writing that down and on a Post-it or something like that and sticking it to the will, or please don't write it on the actual will, because I see that too. Any changes that you need to make actually need to be done in the same formality as the will, meaning that you have to have witnesses on that as well. It needs to be in writing. And hopefully you have that notarized and executed the same way that your actual will was executed properly. So just keep that in mind. Everything has to be done very formally, which is why we, handle it all. I like to have my eyes on everything myself. I don't like to send documents out for people to do. I've seen some attorneys do that. And not that it's bad. It's just, I like to make sure everything's done, under a lot of supervision. so that we know
That's
it's
right.
done correctly. One thing that comes up, it actually came up in a meeting yesterday that I had with a family, and that is some things pass outside of probate. So some things are going to pass outside of the will. It will not control everything that you've got if what you've got are things like a life insurance policy or a 401k or an IRA or retirement account that has a beneficiary designation. I feel like I talk about this a lot, but I think it's always a surprise to people because we were planning distribution schedules for the daughters in this case. And one daughter, my clients felt like she would benefit more from having a longer distribution. So it's more like just residual sort of income for her and not getting everything all at once because they felt like she wouldn't know what to do or maybe wouldn't make the best choices with getting a lump sum of money if something were to happen to them. So we talked about what the options are on that, but the reality of that of their situation was most of their money was in an IRA. And I said, well, we can talk about this as much as we want. And in their scenario, they had a trust as well. I said, but this isn't going, we can put this in the trust. We can say whatever we want to say. But if it's not trust assets or if it's not assets of your estate, if you don't have a trust, then it doesn't matter. It's not going to go through that distribution schedule because it passes outside of it. When you have a 401k or an IRA and you put your beneficiaries on there, then guess what? That just goes to them. It doesn't pass through the court. It doesn't pass through your trust necessarily unless the trust is the beneficiary. So that's something to keep in mind if you are worried about one of your beneficiaries inheriting and how they're going to inherit or whatever, then keep in mind that not everything is going to go through that process. And you can say whatever you want in your will. And I've seen this too, where they want to name their niece as their sole beneficiary, but they don't change their beneficiary designations with their IRA or their other accounts. Well, then it doesn't go to her. It's going to go to whomever is designated as the beneficiary. So keep that in mind too, because that's a big shock to people sometimes, but those beneficiary designations will control those assets. So doesn't matter what your will says, they're going to go the way they're going to go. So make sure that you have that up to date with how you want it.
Emily, can we talk for just a minute about public versus private and that your will is a public document and
Yeah,
because it goes through the court system?
Yeah, it does get filed. It is filed with the court system. There's a lot more privacy measures in place now as opposed to how it used to be. But at the end of the day, I tell people this and they're kind of shocked, but there are these lists that you can buy that are called inheritance lists. And, because of the semi-public nature of probate documents, that you can really get your hands on a lot of information. And the people that inherit properties, let's say, that becomes public. So they go on this list that people can buy, and then they can essentially become sort of targets of someone knowing that they've inherited or just trying to target that person for whatever reason. But yeah, certainly if you want to keep things a lot more private, then that's where a trust is a really great thing because everything that your trust, most hopefully, I can't guarantee that because we never know what's going to happen, but a trust can keep things private and can keep it all within the family because it doesn't have to go through that process. Any trust assets too, just because we're talking about assets that pass outside of probate, yeah, trust assets are going to be those things too. A trust fund, it's funny because people have this like certain image in their mind about a trust fund. And somebody mentioned Richie Rich to me in a meeting yesterday. I was like, that's exactly what you think of. But it's really just about the title. It's just about the title. A trust is just an agreement that you create to hold title to property that you're still going to control, an irrevocable trust. And you're just retitling it. And that's what funding the trust really means. It sounds better than it actually, than it actually is. But yeah.
Yeah, I know. I think in conversations that we've had with clients after signings, they kind of thought that signing the trust documents and signing the will was all they had to do. But in reality, a trust only works if you retitle your assets to the name of the trust. And what we call that is funding the trust.
Right.
And it's really, really important that your assets, like your home, if that applies, are actually titled to the trust.
Right.
And if they're not, if you sign all the trust documents, but you don't retitle your house, then it still has to go through probate. The trust doesn't really benefit you in that scenario.
Yeah, and that happens a lot when, and people, they do want to walk out the door and be done, but we have to remind them, okay, we still have to, and a lot of times, like with a home, we take care of that deed and things like that for them. I'm certainly all over everything because I want to make sure that we accomplish what the goal is, which is usually to avoid probate. So that's the whole point of the plan. But, it doesn't always happen because I can't get into their bank accounts and change things. I can't do everything for them. So we do our best to make sure that they understand what needs to happen and what they need to do. So you do have homework when it comes to planning for this stuff, because if you want to avoid probate, there's stuff you got to do. You got to retitle some things. You got to figure out, how to make beneficiaries up to date, but also, create some beneficiaries on some financial accounts and things like that. So you do your homework ahead of time so that somebody doesn't have to do it for you afterwards, and then spend a lot of money out of your estate to do that as well. If this is you, and if you need to get your will or your estate plan done, make sure you come see us, come talk to us. emilyhickslaw.com/I need a will is a great place to start. And then you can book a call with us right on our website. It's super easy. You can pick your time, and then we can do it via Zoom or via phone, however you prefer. And then we can talk about what you need and get you going, get you squared away, get you set up, because I know everybody procrastinates when it comes to this stuff, and you never know what's going to happen. And don't wait until it's too late. Your family will thank you. I guarantee you. Thank you so much, Brittany. Any other questions from you before we end this segment?
No, I think you did such a good job explaining the basics of a will. And I'm really excited to talk to some listeners who want to get their plan in place.
I know. Let us know too, if you have any questions or if there are any topics that you'd like for us to talk about on the show. I would love to know what your questions are. So you can send us a contact on elderlawhour.com or on emilyhickslaw.com. You can write your question there and let us know what you want to hear, and we would love to talk about it on air. All right. Thanks so much, Brittany. We will be right back.
Are you approaching retirement or entering a new chapter of life? Now is the time to consider critical decisions that impact your future and the well-being of your loved ones. As you navigate this transition, ensure you've secured your legacy through proper estate planning. Don't fall into the common misconception that you and your spouse can make decisions for each other in times of legal incapacity without a plan in place. Without proper estate planning, you risk a probate judge making decisions for you, which can be costly and cumbersome for your spouse. Protect your assets and ensure they align with your unique circumstances and objectives. Avoid the default state laws that may not reflect your wishes and could lead to unintended consequences, such as disinheriting your spouse or forcing them to litigate your estate. You also may be considering the possibility of a new relationship after the loss of a spouse. It's essential to enter these relationships with clarity, safeguarding your assets and preserving existing family ties. A premarital agreement becomes crucial in these situations, providing legal protection and clarity. When it comes to your children, thoughtful estate planning is key. Protect their inheritance from squandering, divorces, lawsuits, and bankruptcies. Your hard-earned wealth should be a source of security, not vulnerability. Additionally, plan for long-term care, a significant consideration as you enter retirement. Secure a long-term care insurance policy while you still qualify, and explore alternatives that can convert into life insurance if not needed. Statistics show a 70% likelihood of requiring long-term care after the age of 65, making proactive planning essential. Our team can guide you through this process, helping you replace impersonal state-written plans with a tailored approach that safeguards your assets and family. Don't overlook estate planning as you approach retirement. Book a call with us today to secure your future with confidence. Visit emilyhickslaw.com and book a call today. We'd love to help.
This is Emily Hicks with the Elder Law Hour, and I'm here today with two very special guests, Greg Richer and Greg Hummer from Jax Hope. And as you all probably remember, Jax Hope is a local organization that is dedicated to helping those with Parkinson's disease. So Greg and Greg, welcome. Thank you so much for being here and talking about Parkinson's today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. We enjoy always coming here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So we have a couple of interesting things coming up. First of all, the month of April is a very special month for those who are suffering or involved with Parkinson's disease because it is Parkinson's month. Is that right, Greg?
Yes, Parkinson's Awareness Month is the month of April. Specifically, April 11th is World Parkinson's Day because that happens to be the birthday of James Parkinson, the doctor who first recognized the neurological disorder.
Okay. So April 11th, and that was his birthday. So that's World Parkinson's Day. And I understand that you guys have a big effort to actually bring awareness to that. And I know that you go to local communities and have them actually declare this in the communities as Parkinson's World Parkinson's Day. Is that right?
Yeah, we go to a community like last year, Jacksonville made a proclamation, Orange Park over in Greg's area, Panama Beach City proclaimed the month as Parkinson's Month. So it's a time for us to go and introduce ourselves to the local city government and get some recognition. And sometimes we get into the paper and let the people know about Parkinson's and how it affects their community.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of the community, we have a big fundraiser coming up with you guys, right? April 13th, we have the First Coast Parkinson's Run. Greg, can you tell us a little bit about the run and what we can look forward to?
Yeah, every year for the last 11 years, this is our 11th anniversary at Riverside Park in Jacksonville. We have a 5K run and then also a mile walk. So if you're a runner, if you're a walker, you can come have a good time. Some people just bring a chair and sit and chat. There's things to go on with the kids. We have information booths from over 25 sponsors that sponsor the event. And by the way, we have openings. So if your company would like to sponsor us, we're more than welcome to have you join us. It's a fun time. And it brings awareness to Parkinson's in the community and Jax Hope and how we try to help people with Parkinson's live more of a fulfilled life. So that's what we do. You're more than welcome to join us. And you are too, Emily.
Oh, well, I'm probably more on that 1 mile walk side, Greg, because I don't think I would actually make it through the 5K run at this point in my life, unfortunately. But yes, no, I'm looking forward to it. It sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. It sounds like you guys have a lot of support from the community, but hey, we can always use more, right? So let's talk a little bit about Jax Hope and what support that you guys do offer with the organization.
One of the things we do is we help support groups. There are several support groups in the Jacksonville area, from southern Georgia down to Palm Coast, Orlando, St. Augustine, and we help them with resources. We provide them with speakers, financial aid for exercise programs for the Parkinson's community, and among other things. And the race is one way we raise funds to support those programs. And last year we had about 800 people registered for the race.
Oh, wow.
And we have also people that just come, like I said, they just sit and chat, have fun. So it's a great time. It's for a great cause.
And that's going to be at Riverside Park, right?
Yes.
And what time?
Registration starts at 8 a.m.
Okay.
And people, come from 8 a.m. The race begins at 9. The walk begins at 9. The run begins at 10. So, and then afterwards there's entertainment and some other activities that goes on for all ages.
Oh, great. And if someone wants to, do they just show up and register there, or can someone register ahead of time?
They can, but the best way is to go to firstcoastparkinsonsrun.com, and you can use your QR code. You can scan that, or there's a registration form online. There's a small fee to participate, and with that you get a shirt, and if you complete the race you get a medal.
Oh, very nice. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of fun for kids of younger ages and older kids such as ourselves.
Yes. Yeah, anywhere from 8 to 98, right, Greg? Yeah.
That's right.
Well, that sounds great. Well, thank you so much for coming here today and letting us know about that. We are going to provide some information on our website, Elder Law Hour, about the First Coast Parkinson's Run, and that's going to be April 13th at Riverside Park here in Jacksonville. There's going to be a 1-mile run and a 5K if you're more ambitious than I am. So we hope to see everybody there April 13th, Saturday morning, starting at 8 a.m. And we'll also put a link to the firstcoastparkinsonsrun.com on our website as well, if you want to head on over there and click the link. Greg Richer and Greg Hummer, thank you guys so much for being here and talking to us today. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you guys at the run.
We appreciate you.
It's our pleasure.
Thanks so much.
This is Vicki Oakes, your St. Johns County Supervisor of Elections. The 2024 elections are coming. They will be here soon. Are you election ready? If not, and you need to be, you can visit our website at votesjc.gov. That's votesjc.gov, or contact our office at 904-823-2238. Make sure you are election ready.
Welcome back to the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks, and I am here with Travis Dauchy, who is a partner at Atlas Wealth Advisors, and he is an advisor for individuals and families and business owners and executives, and helps them with retirement planning, business succession planning, our favorite tax planning, which I'm not getting into because I'm terrible with taxes, and estate planning. So, Travis, one of the challenges that we have been facing, and I mention it all the time about how many people are, moving to Florida and how much of that demographic is elderly, but to layer on to that issue is the almost epidemic, that we have in this country of cognitive decline and diseases like dementia and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and the long-term care that's required for those diseases, but also just from the relational aspect of it. A lot of what I do is helping people decide who will be in charge of them if they can't be in charge of themselves. Is kind of just like an easy way, to put that. And I know that you have the same struggles with your business, because we're just seeing more and more, even at earlier ages, of cognitive decline, and it's really, really scary for us.
It is, and it's a like you said, it's a building issue that's happening. We're seeing it more and more at younger ages. I've had people as early as in their 40s have early onset Alzheimer's issues, and they're incapable of taking care of themselves, potentially within a year or two. And a lot of times they don't even know the issue is starting. It is simply advancing to the point that somebody around them is very aware something is wrong until they work to get a diagnosis. So yeah, it affects everything that we do. Obviously, there's a massive cost that's associated with the care that's provided. It's not unusual for us to see long-term care type costs run $10,000 a month.
Easy.
I've seen high end, north of $25,000 a month for full memory care, 24-hour care in some areas. Obviously, that can drain resources in a very, very fast way. So a lot of the work we're doing with those is trying to protect the family. It's those relationships. It's those people that you're trying to help. It's protecting all sides financially. It's having the correct insurances in place to deal with the unknown, because you could be completely healthy at an older age and nothing's on the horizon, no problems. It's the best time to set things up so that if there is a problem, it's all addressed.
Yes,
I always
please
say
come see us at that point in time.
at the end of the day, I tell people this all the time. You want to have confidence in your plan. You want to have a plan that you have complete confidence in, that is going to work, and you want to be in a mental capacity standpoint to truly evaluate the strength of your plan and decide it's the one you want to go with. Stumbling into these things is in some cases catastrophic for the family. Sometimes all the assets get used up early in the care. And I'll give you an example of two spouses. If you've got the wife needs long-term care, has an early onset dementia type related issue, and you spend all the money on her care, what does the husband have left to pay the bills?
Exactly.
And there are steps, there are things you can do. You need to talk to us early.
Yes.
Because it snowballs very quickly against you. So Emily, I know you have a lot of experience in that area.
Yeah, that hits, that's a lot of people that I deal with. A married couple, for instance, I'm thinking of, they worked and worked and worked and saved for retirement, and they did everything right.
Yep.
And then he gets a diagnosis of dementia. And I mean, the bills are just astronomical. She actually took care of him at home as long as she could. But, one of the ugly sides of some of these diseases is with certain diseases, especially in men in particular, they can become quite violent. So, in that scenario, he became very unpredictable. He became a little bit violent, towards her. It really became an unsafe situation for her at home. And she did as much as she could for as long as she could and did a really great job taking care of him. But at a certain point, she's not a nurse, and she's also, in her late 70s. So, it's like, I mean, it's
a lot harder
just,
to move a person. Yeah.
it's hard for me, I mean, I couldn't imagine. So she did, I always tell her, I'm like, you did it as well as anyone could have done. Like you should be proud of how well you took care of him, because there's a lot of shame with having to put your spouse into a facility. And I totally understand that. We all want to, hold hands and die together at the same time. But, the reality is it's probably not going to happen like it does in the movies. So for her, what we really looked at was, okay, we have a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
She was perfectly healthy. We're like, she's going to live. I mean, who knows how much longer she's going to live? She's going to need that money for herself, and this money is draining out. So there is definitely, so many things, especially in Florida. I will say with long-term care planning from a legal perspective, we have a lot of tools that we can use. So don't think, if you're out there thinking you're just going to have to drain all of your savings, your spouse isn't going to have anything left, your kids are going to be left with nothing. That's not always the case. There's a lot of things that we can do. So again, it's always, helpful to plan early, because if not, you're really going to be in crisis, and you're going to be in crisis mode, and we have a lot less options. There are still options for you. So I don't want you to be discouraged by that. There's always something we can do, but sooner the better.
I would agree. And with so many people moving to Florida, right? Florida is,
oh my gosh. We've
forever.
always been a hot spot, but I mean,
it's been a hot spot. So many more people are coming, and a lot of people do come here and retire here. And there are special advantages that Florida has for retirees that you don't get in other states. So that's a key. The issue becomes, you've had an entire life potentially in another state, in another location, with family around in a different capacity.
Yeah.
So that switch we've seen have a mental impact on decisioning people make. Is they were comfortable, it was working, they moved to make an improvement in their lives, potentially weather improvement, tax improvement, life improvement, all the good stuff. But when they landed, they didn't have a solid plan of estate planning, of powers of attorney, of really trusted contacts that were local, that could help guide them through continued steps. And we've seen that a number of times with people moving. It doesn't have to be to Florida, but Florida is definitely a top destination where people move potentially in older years. They're in their 70s, 80s. When they land, their decisioning capacity is diminished quite a bit, and they will sometimes stumble and make a poor decision that is sometimes irreversible, that they just weren't given the advice, weren't given the information to make an informed decision. So, there's a lot of tools out there, a lot of resources to help, but you want to talk to a trusted advisor, talk to trusted people in your network. Don't wing it.
Don't wing it.
Do not wing it.
Please don't wing it.
And again, people that I've run into, they've worked hard their whole lives. They've saved, as you said, the people that did everything right, but sometimes they don't take that next step and say, let's continue to do everything right. Let's be proactive. And I see the biggest one coming from that cognitive decline. Do you have things like a power of attorney on hand? Is there somebody who can step in and make decisions for you so things don't slip? Bills don't get not paid.
Yeah, exactly. But, and also, I mean, talking about long-term planning specifically, not every power of attorney is created equally. Some of them I see quite often, they don't have basic language that we need for that type of planning. So, you really want to make sure that you have an attorney that perhaps understands elder law issues as well, because there's a lot of stuff in there that we use that perhaps someone that doesn't do elder law wouldn't use, because that scenario doesn't come up for them. But the sad thing is we have it in place. And then once, the person is incapacitated or can no longer make, the decisions for themselves, it's too late. It's like, you really got to get it while you're healthy and while, you can make those decisions for yourself, because, there's a dark side to this. And the dark side is a lot of times, I mean, number one, it's incredibly difficult for someone like me to understand when someone is actually already in cognitive decline, because if I have never met you, I obviously do not live with you. So I'm not going to, I have tests that I can do, and I have, we all have like our little tricks of the trade, but the truth of the matter is, if you're introducing me to this new friend of yours that's recently come on the scene, perhaps you've moved to Florida, you have this great new friend, and you want to have him or her as power of attorney, that it's, usually I have a little tingle up my spine, or, the red flags, appear. But I mean, honestly, it's really, that's the kind of stuff that I always look out for. I'm like, where did this person come from? Well, why are we nominating him for
How
power of
many
attorney?
housekeepers have taken it all?
Absolutely. I see housekeepers a lot, to be honest.
Yeah,
They will be in the will.
there
And
are.
there's not anything wrong with that.
And that's, that's the changing demographic. You've got a lot of people, like we know is roughly half the people in this country are single. So you have people who don't have that support structure.
Yeah.
They are relying on whoever's around, the housekeeper's around. So that's who you're talking to, and that's how you're taking advice. And that may be fine, but that may not be what a 10-year-old or 10-year earlier version of yourself would have decided was a good plan. You
Right.
might have you got to start early on these things. Don't shortchange yourself by thinking I'll take care of this at a later point. It's only going to cost you.
Absolutely, because you just never know, when that's going to hit. I mean, for my personal situation, which I tell people about all the time, because it was such a shock to us. My own mother got diagnosed with Parkinson's. Another thing that you have to understand is just for her to get a diagnosis took over a year. It took over a year. So the symptoms, when we look back on it, started occurring years before, but we didn't really put two and two together because, you're not expecting that. Number one, she, her symptoms appeared in her very early 60s. She died at 67. She died last year. I mean, and it did not take very long. Once she actually got the diagnosis, she died 2 years later. And it's, looking back on it, we think, God, we're so stupid. We didn't see, this sign. We didn't see that sign. But
No,
you really,
it's impossible when it's you. Can you imagine? It's you has to make that call of, do I understand it? You don't know what you don't know.
you really don't know. I mean, she didn't know what was happening to her, so it's crazy how something like that really takes over, and it takes root so early, and you don't know. And even, my dad didn't, like, they were living together. Even he didn't really know what was happening. I mean, you really don't expect it. I know we hear about it all the time and we talk about it all the time. You still, until it happens to you, I mean, no one really expects to lose the functioning of decision making and things like that, and it can just leave you so vulnerable, not just to not have planning in place or anything like that, but just it can leave you so vulnerable to so many issues. I mean, first of all, the online world that we have nowadays.
That's a bottomless pit potentially. Yeah, you can how many aliens are coming next week? I don't know. There's issues out there
I mean,
that
it's crazy.
that could lead you down a path that harms your true objectives. Is you dwell and put energies into things that are not great. That I look at some of the cases I've worked through, specifically with Alzheimer's type work, and how the ones that had a plan, that had resources, that had this taken care of, it was still painful, but they could focus on the care, focus on at least making sure the person is comfortable. I have people that lived, they had Alzheimer's for more than a decade and didn't know where they were on the planet, but were happy. We're not, they got them in the right situation, right medications, right everything, that they were content in their situation. I've had other ones where that was not the case, and you're trying to move families in together. Families are moving in where the medical needs are so far above the capabilities of the people that they're moving into, children, nieces, nephews, all down the line, who I think in a lot of ways are really trying to help, but end up being consumed by this process as well. And it's devastating to everybody. So definitely, while you're in the spot to make a clear, definitive decision, don't neglect this stuff.
Yeah.
Don't take it lightly, because nobody wants to assume it's going to happen to them. So if you got a plan, you don't have to worry about that.
Right. And
If you don't, everybody's got to worry about it.
exactly. And, that's such a good point of mentioning the families, because, caregiving is just such a big issue for people and families nowadays. I mean, what we're seeing a lot of are maybe sons or daughters who are having to quit their jobs because mom needs help and she really needs full-time care. And, maybe we can't afford to get her full-time care. So people quit their job. And it's really unfortunate, because the ripple effect of that, that's affecting savings, retirement. I mean, all kinds of, it could really have, just such an effect of that you can't even really probably put together in your mind, but it can affect
every direction imaginable. It's I guess the good news on it all is the medical capabilities we've come up with. Quite frankly, things that would have killed you a couple decades ago are treatable, are manageable, and they are doing so many things towards dementia, Alzheimer's, all of these, stroke care, all the things that, quite frankly, we're ending a process for people. They're able to manage a lot of those symptoms, and they're able to extend people's lives, and that is great. The cost is there's a care component that comes with all of these, and again, plans that were designed and written 20 years ago may not account for the realities of today in the opportunities that are out there, again, to help out a family member, but do it smartly, and to, as the person who needs care, protecting spouses, protecting children, so this isn't a devastating financial hit to their situation, that they can survive past this and still be okay. Again, doing nothing is not an option anymore. You have to address these issues head on.
Absolutely. And, just the psychological effects of the changes in the family dynamic and the relationships. I mean, I think one of the things that makes it so difficult for people is when you go through one of those diseases, when you're living with that, you sort of become like a child again. And I think that's really hard for people to accept, is that you're going to become, maybe just not helpless completely, but, perhaps you will be, and you're going to need help with just the daily functions of life. And I think that's a very hard thing for us to wrap our minds around, but it's certainly something that if you don't plan, if you fail to plan, you certainly plan to fail. That's a cliche, but it's absolutely true. So,
don't need to fail.
It's a cliche for a reason, right?
Yeah. It's all too common. It's too big of a percentage of people do not look at this, especially in Florida. I mean, a lot of these communities are built for retirement. They're built for care. They're designed for that. Even the individuals that are there don't have their plans in order.
Right.
That's a big concern to myself. I've got, between my wife and myself, there's aging parents who, we're looking at these things, and I've seen things with so many families over the years that you just can't. It's hard to express the pain that comes from this not planning. We've stressed it a couple times, but you gotta get up, you gotta get a piece. If it's not written down, it's not gonna happen. And if you don't make that effort, everything you don't want to happen will happen.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
It's sad but true. I mean, you really have to take a hard look at reality and just do what you got to do. I mean, it's a tough world, but you can make it better by documenting your decisions while you can. So we obviously encourage you all to do that. And If you have any more questions, please contact me or Travis. How can they get in touch with you?
Easiest way, give me a call, 949-244-9568. Again, my phone number, 949-244-9568. And my email is tdauchy, TDAUCHY, @atlas, ATLASPWA.com. Look forward to talking to you.
And thank you so much. This has been really, really helpful. I think hopefully we've encouraged you to assert yourself, go out there, get a plan, help take care of your family, look out for your future self, because if you don't do it, you're really leaving it into others' hands. And I know you don't want to do that. So Travis, thank you so much. We will also put his details on elderlawhour.com. This has been Emily Hicks with Elder Law Hour, and we'll be right back.
Are you ready to invest in real estate without the headaches? Look no further than investjacksonville.com, your trusted partner in turnkey real estate investments. With over 18 years of experience, our process has been fine-tuned, and now we're opening up our team to other people just like you. At investjacksonville.com, we're selective about who we work with because we believe in delivering the best. Our dedicated acquisition team scours the market to find the finest properties, while our skilled construction and maintenance team ensures every detail is taken care of. From new roofs to granite countertops, HVAC systems to plumbing and electrical, we leave no stone unturned to make sure there's no surprises. We're in this together with our investors for the long haul. With our first-year guarantee, we put our money where our mouth is. We guarantee your rental rate for the first year, giving you time to build reserves and budget for any surprises that may come your way later. We believe in our construction team and our tenant placement team, which is why we offer this unbelievable guarantee. We're committed to your success and peace of mind. We're passionate about making it simple and easy, and a no-brainer for others to get started investing, because we know what real estate can do for people to reach financial freedom. So if you're ready to invest with confidence, contact Invest Jacksonville today at 904-536-3000 or visit our website at investjacksonville.com. Let us show you why there's nobody quite like us. investjacksonville.com, your authentic partner in hassle-free real estate investing. Contact us now.
Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you are interested in getting your estate plan done and you really want to talk to someone about that, head on over to emilyhickslaw.com/I-need-a-will and learn about how you can meet with us. We schedule free meetings right on our website. So head on over there and schedule a chat. I'd love to talk to you today about your estate plan. Also, you can head on over to elderlawhour.com to find out more about today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks. Join us this and every Saturday for the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks.